The extended response is always going to require you to read two passages and write an analysis about the two passages in the text box. All right, that's it. They're gonna now the topic on which you might be asked to weigh in on, that's gonna change definitely, but the task is still the same. Read these two different things and tell us why you think one is stronger than the other. You're going to use evidence from the article in order to support your response. And I'll talk more about that as we progress, because I always get asked, how much can I pull out of, can I quote from the actual documents? And we have an answer for that for sure. All right, you have 45 minutes to do this. So you have about as much time as we have left in class in order to read, plan, super important, type out and edit your response. Okay. It's definitely enough time once you get practice under your belt. I promise you, once you get going on these, you'll be like, oh, I got this. This is cake. I completely know which end is up. All right. All right. Extended response is super important to be good at because it makes up about 20% of your total RLA score. So you want to make sure you have a good showing on this because it's worth a fifth of your grade. All right. And you are going to be scored on a couple different things, your analysis, your development and organization, and your writing conventions. Okay. So the analysis is like, how you looked at the two different documents and what you like, how you came to your conclusion about which one was stronger, how you organize that, right? Did it look like, oh, and this other thing, and oh, by the way, or did it look like you had from jump, right, an idea about how you were going to structure it to make your argument the best that it could be? And then writing conventions, that's your spelling, your grammar, your sentence structure, your word choice. It's all those things that as a reader make it much easier for me to understand you. So if you have poor spelling in there and I'm like, I don't know what this word is. Like I don't think you're using the word correctly. That can limit how I understand you. And so we want to be as clear of a communicator as humanly possible. Okay. So we're going to talk about guidelines that you should have sort of front of mind before you sort of jump into doing any sort of work. All right. So these are the things that are going to be standard. And if you already get these in your head about what your task is, you won't have to read them, which allows you some more time in order to develop your argument. So you can see here right on the screen, this is what it's going to say each and every time you come across extended response on the GED. The instructions will always be the same. There's nothing more to say about this. Okay. I do like that it says, it reiterates again to plan your response before you begin writing. At this stage of being a Kaplan teacher, which is now over 20 years, true story, I can definitely tell when people have taken a moment to plan out what they're going to say and when they have not taken a moment to plan out what they're going to say. It is very obvious to me. And so planning should be part of your process. It will make you feel more like secure and calm on the test as well. And I can tell you this just from my own personal experience and dealing with so many students over the years is that some students are like, oh my gosh, I meant to say that. Like, I had this best idea ever. I was saving it for the last piece. I was going to be like my home run. I was hitting for the fences and I completely spaced what I was going to say. Well, if you have a little summary, a little outline written down in advance, you don't have to worry about what like escapes you in the heat of the moment. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on. So this is some helpful tips right here. Like these are some pro tips I have to tell you. Generally, to get full points on an extended response analysis, you're going to need 4 to 7 paragraphs. You are. They're going to be like 3 to 7 sentences each. You basically have like 400, 500 words when all is said and done. You could have a shorter response. You could. It's just that what you're being tested on is how good of a writer you are. And we're couching that in like, can you do an analysis? Okay. But ultimately, I want to make sure that you're like a really successful writer out there because it's so much a part of our day to day, right? Whether you have a job where you write a lot, or you just write letters to people, or you have to formulate something in a written document before you share it, like in a speech, or if you just want to get yourself straight before you go have a conversation with a spouse or a coworker or a boss. It's just very important that we're clear communicators. All right. So again, part of the guidelines here is that we're going to think about the argumentation presented in the passage. Argumentation just simply means what somebody has said, what one of the authors has said. So they're making a claim, they're supporting it, they're bringing up their credibility if they have it, like I'm a doctor, or I've pulled 7 doctors and they like this type of toothpaste. All right, we're figuring out who makes the better case. Anybody do debate by chance in school? Anybody do that by chance, debate? Kind of like the written version of that, right? Those are oral arguments. This is just sort of being like, okay, we took a topic and we saw like, oh, you really like fleshed it out and got to the heart of it. All right, all good. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I did not do debate either. I was a somewhat of a decent track person, so I did that year round. The last thing I wanted to do in my spare time was to do something more with my brain. Okay, so when we write our essay, and I know this is a very busy slide, but you have it in your PDF so you can look at it later on, is your goal is just to look at which position is better supported. That's really all it comes down to. It's not the one that you agree with necessarily, right? It's just the one that makes the better argument. And you can look at them very objectively and be like, okay, this person makes a point, but this person backs up their argument with like facts and analysis, and they use this data about these streams and these like fish and what have you. And then you're defending your position to like why you thought this person did a great job. What? Defending their position. It is very important that this be laid out in a very logical order. And we're going to go more into this. And we're going to see a great example actually at the end. I'll make sure that we get to that. So I'm looking at the time. I'll make sure we get there because it just shows you like this is what it looks like. Additionally, after this class, if you go on the Google or whatever your favorite web browser is, and you type in extended response, top scoring RLA essays, you will probably be able to find a very credible source, even on the GED website itself, of some top scoring responses. And you'll be able to like, oh, I'm getting it now. You'll be able to figure out the tone and tenor of what scoring high looks like, and you will be able to emulate that. I just throw this up here. So an argument is going to include a claim. It's a point that the author is trying to make. They're going to include support for it or evidence. And then there's going to be a premise. Okay, the premise is like this unstated assumption that has to be true for the argument to be logical. So basically, like as you're reading these things and be like, oh, I see. The premise here is that we all believe that traffic rules make society a little bit better because then we don't have like nut jobs driving like crazy, going the wrong way down the road. Okay, that'd be a premise. I don't necessarily need to come out and be like, hey, traffic laws make it safer for all of us so we can all coexist here in this world together. But it's understood. We all understand that, and that is what gives credibility also to the author's position or the author's claim. All right, so here is a coal writing prompt, and it tells us right here, passage A tells us the benefits of clean coal, and passage B is telling us, hey, there are some drawbacks to clean coal. And so we have to figure out who makes the better argument. As a reminder, I don't care what you think about coal when it comes to the RLA response. Okay, it's neither here nor there. It isn't. Most of the times when I've gone to respond to things like this, it is almost easier for me to objectively see the other side's position, especially if it's like really well backed up, because I'm like, oh, the other one I sort of like feel too much. Like I'm just like obvi, right? Like I'm in too much in my like my heart But then when I have somebody very clearly line out the alternate position from what I think, and it's well supported with facts and figures, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really sound argument. Why? Because that author forced me to get into my headspace. And now I'm thinking here, which is much easier to write about when I go to take the GED. So just throwing that out there. Do I care about what you think about Cole? Absolutely. Do I care on the test as your grader? I do not. All right, so we have to figure out what the writing assignment is about. And then we've already said it. We got these 2 passages about clean coal. And then we want to rephrase the task in the form of a question, because that helps anchor us and helps center us and figure out what we should be answering. Okay, so here we want to figure out which of the passages is best supported. All right, that's our goal at each and every time, promise you. And then we have to figure out what we have been asked to include, and those instructions will stay the same every single time. We want specific and relevant information from the text. Cool. All right. There are 5 steps that we want to follow when addressing the extended response. And I don't share this with you to be like, what? I got to remember all this on top of everything else. No, it's just more like, as we're training ourselves in order to figure out how to respond, this is a good like go-to to be like, oh yeah, I do this and then I do this next. It just helps sort of like train us to figure out how we need to construct our analysis, and so we don't leave anything out. So we'll go through these. We want to read passage 1 and we want to analyze the argument. I want to be like, that was a really strong point. That is really weak evidence. I want to sort of pick it apart. Okay. I don't want to weigh in on whether I like it or not yet, or what really my thoughts are on it. I simply want to be like, oh yes, you make a strong argument there. You backed it up. You did this, or you didn't do it. And then I want to move on to passage number 2 and do the exact same thing. Okay. And then from there, I want to develop my own argument. Okay. So I'm taking 2 arguments and I'm making my own argument, and I'm going to definitively land and say which position is better supported. I need to specifically say passage number 2 was more strongly supported because they include this evidence, and then I'm going to talk about it. And I need to have 2 or 3 points, which will become the body paragraphs. Okay. So it's just like any other essay. I have an introductory passage or paragraph, excuse me, where I just say right up front, who do I think had a better argument? I might allude to why I thought it was a better argument, but I don't give too much detail there. I don't want to give away the farm yet, right? I want you to keep reading. And then in the body paragraphs, I'm going to be like, because they used the map, because they brought in expert witness, because they only pulled one city dweller. Okay, that's why I don't like this other passage. I want to outline what I'm going to present next, and then conclusion. Okay, I might be able to do that in the 5 paragraphs that I just talked about. It might take me a little bit more to outline all of this. It might take me a couple paragraphs. It's okay. Rule of thumb, I would say, for each paragraph is you can't really have a paragraph that's any less than 3 sentences. So I would say strive between at least 4 sentences and 7 sentences for each of your paragraphs. That should sort of be rule of thumb when you're constructing this, because it gives you enough opportunity to say what that other person said, what you think about it, and why you think about it in that way. Okay. All right. From there, we want to go ahead and type our response. Again, it says intro and conclusion. Very important to have a little conclusion on there because it ties the bow so nicely on your essay. And a conclusion can almost be like your introduction sort of rehashed, if you will. So it's almost like an introduction, like I crack the egg, right? And then a conclusion, kind of like whip it up, right? And I'm like, as I've already proven to you, the same thing stands that I brought up in paragraph number 1 when I introduced this. Like, yeah, passage number 1 author is definitely making a stronger point of view. All right. And then I want to save time to proofread my response. Please take time to proofread. Please, it just takes a few minutes. It does. We say to allot 5 minutes to it. I'm a realist. I understand sometimes that we don't always have 5 minutes to do it. Never, ever, ever leave that extended response with time on the clock if you have not reviewed it. Okay. It's so easy to go back in and be like, oh, I used the wrong verb, or oh, that doesn't make any sense, or I didn't, oh, I have a run on. I can quickly fix my run on sentence there. Okay. So, again, we reiterate not to think of your own position or experiences as you read the passage. The RLA response does not care what you personally think, what your opinion is. You are simply being asked to analyze the arguments. That's what your grade is based on. All right. So we are going to pay very close attention to experts, research, reliable sources, relevant facts. Okay. They have to be relevant. Okay. I don't want to talk about like Sasquatch if my entire passage is supposed to be on Diet Coke. All right. Right. And logical conclusions. That is what I'm looking for in these other two authors whose source documents I now have. If you have a vague reference, if it says something like, they told me, the mysterious they, which I hear a lot as a teacher, like, well, they told me we didn't have class. I'm like, tell me who. I want named sources. I want relevant details. Okay. I don't want mishmash reasoning. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. All right. I'm analyzing this. I'm grading these other people essentially on their positions. Okay. All right. So your note board that you have, because this is a lovely online test, right? You're taking it on the computer now. You are going to make sure that you keep track of each author's claim. Another mistake that you want to make sure you don't do is you don't want to inadvertently kind of swap your two authors. You don't want to write an entire passage about this other guy, right? You feel me? You want to just make sure author one and author two are very straight in what they said. So it's helpful to take notes. Those notes also are the foundational pieces of your outline about how you plan on writing your own extended response. All right. Jotting down notes, jotting down notes. Take your time, because once you have your outline, you are off to the races, friends. You are just moving and grooving, I promise you. All right. So just a couple more pro tips here. They're in your PDF, but I want to make sure we get to the heart of the matter. Okay. So this slide tells us that we should spend 5 minutes doing our outline. As I just said, if you are taking notes already on the different arguments as you're sort of reading them, not unlike what we do when we actually read passages in RLA and we answer questions about them on the multiple choice format, right? When we're taking little notes, if you have those notes, you can use them to then turn them into the outline from which you're going to write from. Sometimes I'll have my notes and then I just go back and I'm like, okay, that's number 1. Up here is number 2. That's number 3. I have an idea of like how I want to go ahead and pop them out, if you will, how I want to craft my response. This today is not a practice test. This is just a block of instruction. We're not going to actually have to write one yourself right today. We are going to look at a good example though. Yes, good question. As mentioned, pick 2 or 3 main ideas. You can jot them down in Word format. You're most welcome. You can also use this. Anybody use these visuals? This is not helpful to me, but I have found other people who are like, this is how my brain works. More power to you if this is like, like you've seen the light. Anybody use a visual in order to sort of outline what they want to write about? Anyone? It's usually at least one in each class. No? Okay. Well, oh, you do? Okay, Addison, there you are. I was like, at least somebody is like, this is how I do my life. Yeah. So thesis statement, like right in the middle. And then I have the different reasons. I can sort of branch those off, even if they're not in like the geometric ovals, right? I can just be like, here are my tangents. Oh yeah, fishbone analysis. I use those at work too, Rebecca. Yes. And then here's my little examples that prong off for them. Note below the thesis statement oval where it says counter argument and faulty reasoning. Okay. So those are really good to include in your response. I can tell you that. So if you have like the author who you think is like weak sauce, if you think they use faulty reasoning, you're going to call it out, because pointing out why you like author number one sometimes hinges on why you don't like what author number two had to say. Okay. They have faulty reasoning. That doesn't even line up. You want to allude to it. Okay. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be its own paragraph necessarily. Depends. Depends on what you have to work with, of course, how much time you have and how you want to organize this. But you want to at least bring it up. Okay. Maybe in one of my paragraphs where I'm singing the praises of author number one and how author number one's like, and now, like, you know, what they had to say was like amaze balls. I could be like, as opposed to author number two, who mentions this faulty reasoning. You can also talk about a counter argument. Some people might tell you that what author number one had to say about solar panels is incorrect. But even author number two guy mentions that they're the wave of the future, or whatever you want to say. Okay. Like it's almost like you being proactively ready to defend your position before someone calls you on it yourself. You're like, I know you might say that this is not a good use of your time, but okay. So all different ways to construct this, all different ways. All right. So developing your argument, we've already talked about this quite a bit. It's just making sure that you are talking about which position is better supported. Thesis statement. Your thesis statement is going to have to be right up front. It's going to have to be right in my face. Does it have to be sentence number one? No. And in fact, in the example we have coming up, it's not like, I think thesis number two is best. Like that's kind of weak the way I bring that, you know, as a grader. Like I'm like, you know, like I'm like, I mean, it's there, it's obvious, but I feel like you could have like put my toe into the water a little bit before I just jump into the deep end and I have to start swimming. But it needs to be in the first paragraph. That's what I'm going to tell you. If it is not the first sentence, it had better be at least the last sentence in my little introductory paragraph. I should not be fishing to figure out what you're about to tell me in the next 5 paragraphs. It should be very obvious to me what your position is. All right. So there's this one, which I don't like as much. I like purple better. Look at this. See that one? Yes. Yes. Passage A is better because it does a good job. I'm like, how dry. But passage number A not only tells me what your position is, but I'm going to tell you something. You have just probably cued my mind to figure out what your outline is for the rest of your response. I'm going to be expected to hear about overuse of water, probably one of your paragraphs, mountaintop removal, and potential mercury poisoning. What is on purple here on your screen? That is a great way of doing it. I give it snaps, top stars. All right, awesome. Okay, when you are developing your argument, you are going to have to figure out which evidence from the passage is going to support your analysis the best. Those become the main ideas. Like we just saw in that last slide right there, I saw in there about overuse of water, mountaintop removal, potentially mercury poisoning. I'm like, guess what? That's great evidence. Those will become the main ideas in my body. Now, yeah, there definitely could be more than 3 pieces of evidence to support the author's claim. All right. If you are struggling to figure out evidence for this person that you're like, they did the best job. If you're like, I can't figure out 3 great ways they did it, but I definitely want to support Jack for city council over here, you had best go back and rethink that. Okay. You should be able to pull that evidence like boom, 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 boom. And we're going to see in our example coming up, which I promise I'll get to very shortly here, that one of them generally, I think in my opinion on GED, one of them is like really like solid. You're like, how can I even argue with that? Like one of them is like some city council member speaking and the other person is like I'm using this fact, figure, detailed, all this information. And I'm like, one generally really stands out to me. That might be because I see them all the time and I'm sort of being like, I'm on to you, GED. You too can possess this same skill, I promise, if you just look at enough of them. All right. Okay. Can you write your argument using words I think, I believe, first person? Yeah. Lily, no worries. We are worried about the Wi-Fi's too. Colleen can put the PDF in chat for you. No worries. Thanks for joining us. Yes. Irma asked, like, can I use first person? I think, I believe. Yeah, you can. You can say first person on GED. You can. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much. So here are some example phrases that you can use when you are talking about the evidence that you want to include in your response. So the passage stated this, which supports this. One example of this from the text is this. So what I'm doing here is I'm highlighting how much you should be drawing from the text that you're given. Okay. If you are pulling something from the text, if you are going to cite it, if you're going to put it in quotes because you've pulled it directly out of there, you have to do something with that. You have to explain to me why you're pulling it out. Like, what does it mean to you? So you see in that first bullet, the passage stated this. I'm pulling this out of the passage, which supports, I'm telling you why I pulled it out. That is showing me that you have done your analysis. The flip of that, okay, is to do bullet number 3, where it says, one example of sharks becoming beached on the sands of Cape May comes from the text. Here it is. I'm now then putting it sort of this way, where I'm telling you why or what that piece from the text is doing for me. You cannot just keep lifting from the passage. If you include too much from the source documents and don't do enough analysis, you will not get a good score. Writing more does not necessarily mean top marks. Okay, there's a balance there. Let us know if you have questions about that. Okay, in case I haven't said it already or it wasn't obvious on one of the other slides, you're spending about 25 minutes of your total 45 minutes writing your response. It's enough time, I promise you, especially if you've done your planning up front. And especially if you realize that GED responses are kind of formulaic. Generally, once you get it, you can be like, oh, I do this, and I do this. Once you start writing them, like you'll be able to pop them out in no time at all. All right. So of course you include your thesis in that introductory paragraph. You've got a topic sentence. Each body paragraph should be sort of its own jam, if you will. You're telling me like its own sort of like, this is my point, this is my point, and this is my point. And using evidence and wrapping it up with a bow with that conclusion. Okay. That conclusion is summarizing your analysis. It is your analysis. Like, as I've mentioned, by mentioning city dwellers, cave dwellers, and Neolithic sharks as drawn from author number 1, right? You're just wrapping a bow on your whole thing that you have created. It can be anxiety inducing, I promise, but honestly, these things are very much like a formula. Promise. All right, and then you write your response. As I mentioned, you could get a 0 if you pull too much information from the source text. Some people are like, this person said this, and then they said this, but there's like no analysis in there. Don't be one of those people. If you have questions about that, please reach out. I definitely usually have, when I'm in Colleen's role and I'm on the back of the camera as the teacher, most students are like, if in this document I included all 3 of these paragraphs, would that be too much? And I'm like, yes, that would be too much, I promise you. All right. So a couple of mistakes that we see more often than not, all right, is when we have somebody say they agree with so-and-so's position, and then they want to tell me all about their granddaddy or their own experience with car pickup line or, right, tetherball, their thoughts on it. It's not what we're testing. Okay. I don't want your feelings. This goes back to what I said about how sometimes it's easier for me to sort of write about like, oh, I support this person who doesn't believe what I think because I go straight from the head. Okay. Otherwise, I get too much in my heart, too much in my feels, and that does not give me a good grade on the GED response. Okay. And then the second little situation here where they'll say, like, I think author number 2 is better. And then I just do author number 1 said this, author number 2 said that. You just have to analyze it. Tell me why you think that. Tell me why you think that. All right. So go ahead and look at this. This is just to sort of get us sort of moving and grooving in the right direction. It's an example. So we have a claim made by the author, and then we have some reasonings why the author thinks this. So I'll go off camera and I'll give you like a minute or two to read through this. And when you're done reading it, just put done in the chat, or a B or a D. Those means like thumbs up. That's what a B or a D looks like in chat to us. So I'll see you in just a minute. All right, I see a bunch of dones in the chat. So let's figure out what is supporting evidence. If you wrote this, show me where, or tell me in chat, not show me, goodness gracious. Tell me what is the supporting evidence for this? What are these distractions? What are these things that are interfering with family time? Anybody have any examples? I'll give you one. Nobody is home at the same time. Everyone's trickling in, right? Okay. Yeah, okay. And then the second sentence, that's right, because I got different people doing different things. Not only are they coming in the door at different times, then they're doing very different things. Somebody is doing some homework, somebody's on the interwebs, texting friends that he or she saw an hour before. The shade. Oh, all right. Yeah. Social work obligations. Yes, that's a good one too. Yeah, those are all supporting evidence. Good. That's exactly right. You have data to back this up. I'm not making this up. This is not in my head. Nobody's even home at the same time. And when they do, there are 3 different parts of the house, right? Good. Excellent. All right. Well done on that little drill. All right. So when we go to proofread, we are going to make sure that our introductory paragraph has our thesis statement. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, we forget to put it in there. Like we're like, I know what I'm going to write about. And then we're just like writing. And then we're like, oh man, I didn't say like up front, like what my position was. You got to tell me. Don't make me fish for it as a reader. Okay. Make sure it's included right there in that first sentence or in that first paragraph. Doesn't have to be the first sentence, as evidenced by the purple we saw on that last slide, which I love. All right. So, and then we're checking to make sure we have one main idea in each of our paragraphs. Does it flow? Oh, flow. I love a good flow when I read these responses. Okay. I'm making sure, like, secondly, in addition, moreover, like, make me think like it's one continuous sort of essay versus like, this happened, then this other thing, and it's just sort of like I just knitted it all together. Using those transitional words is really lovely. I just think it ups your essay so much more. Okay. If there's something I can take out that sounds berserk nuts, technical word there, remove it. Okay. Just read like, I don't know what that even means. Well, if you don't know, they don't know. Okay. So take it out. If you have a short, choppy sentence and you got 5 minutes remaining on the test, you got the power of being able to like put it back together. You can just reframe it. It's so much better than back in the day when we had to write everything down. Like essays were like all written. You'd be like, oh man. And you see poor students who are like with their eraser and just like rubbers flying everywhere. You're like, oh, whoops. Could I improve my word choice? Like if you have the time to do this, you may as well do it. And then of course, the concluding paragraph. Am I reinforcing my thesis? Okay, so this is just a litany of different things that you should just be paying attention to. Capitalization matters. You're not texting anybody. I know even when I've written things, sometimes I do like a quick thing that I would use normally only on my phone, where I've written it in like an email to like even at work, and I'm like, I want to just make sure I'm not using any, I want to remember that this is an academic presentation and that I need to avoid a run-on. I need to have capitalization, verb tense matters, all the things. Okay. Keep out my normal witty self. Okay. Remember, I'm just trying to get a good grade. I'm not trying to be the life of the party. All right. All the things.